U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has arrived in Saudi Arabia as part of a new push to broker a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. He's set to meet with leaders of Gulf Arab states who've been mediating a plan for a truce and the return of hostages held in Gaza since the Hamas-led terror attack on the 7th of October. At the same time, a Hamas delegation is expected to meet Egyptian officials in Cairo for talks also aimed at securing an agreement. The negotiations are taking place as the threat of a ground invasion continues to loom over Rafah, where over half of Gaza's population is sheltering.
The city of Rafah has been the last refuge for families fleeing the fighting in Gaza. Previously deemed a safe zone by Israel, many here still struggle to get by.
We are 10 people living in the same tent, and we suffer from the heat and mosquitoes. We do everything inside the tent, cooking, cleaning, bathing the children. I have sick children who cannot tolerate the heat, and we are cramped inside the tent, rarely going outside.
Israel says Rafah is a stronghold for Hamas militants and plans to launch a ground invasion. Speaking in Saudi Arabia, the Palestinian president urged against it.
We appeal to the United States of America to ask Israel to stop the Rafah operation, because America is the only country capable of preventing Israel from committing this crime.
The US has previously said it could not support a Rafah operation without a credible humanitarian plan. Israel says it is scaling up aid deliveries into Gaza with plans for a new ocean delivery corridor.
Together with the United States Central Command, we're working on a temporary maritime pier known as JLOTS, which stands for Joint Logistics Over the Shore.
Aid deliveries via air continue to bring some desperately needed supplies, but humanitarian groups warn it's not enough. With hunger widespread and a looming risk of famine for many in Gaza.
For more, I'm now joined by DW correspondent Rebecca Ritters, who is in Jerusalem. Rebecca, good morning. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Saudi Arabia today. What are we expecting from him?
Well, this is Antony Blinken's 7th visit to the Middle East and his 5th to Saudi Arabia, Beresh, since October 7, since the war began. He'll be bringing with him a very similar message as he has done in previous visits. Of course, the ceasefire talks and this potential hostage deal definitely topping the agenda and coming at a very key time when we're seeing this crucial phase of the hostage negotiations. But he'll also be there to talk to other Gulf and Arab leaders from Qatar, UAE, Egypt, and of course Saudi Arabia to discuss a post-war Gaza. That's something that is very much in the minds of US officials. And of course, every time he visits Saudi Arabia, he'll also be bringing with him on the agenda a willingness or a potential to talk about the ongoing conversation about Israeli-Saudi normalization. Now, that is something that the US see as a potential way forward in this post-Gaza era, and it's something that's been high on the agenda for the US administration, for President Biden's US administration since he took office. Before October 7, those talks were already making some headway, and they are still in the pipeline, though the sticking point being Israel's refusal to talk about any future Palestinian state. So it's a very, very big agenda that Antony Blinken brings with him, as always, from Saudi Arabia. Then he'll be following on to Jordan and here to Israel as well.
So lots on the plate for Antony Blinken there. Meanwhile, ceasefire talks are happening in Egypt as well, with a Hamas delegation present.
Yeah, we're getting to a point where we're seeing some very positive moves in this hostage negotiation. Certainly the closest we've come in certainly several weeks, if not months, since these negotiations have been ongoing and largely stalling since the last negotiation was successful back in November. Now, last week, Egyptian officials were in Israel to discuss with negotiators here about what they would potentially agree to. They have sent back with them to Egypt, with those officials, a counter-proposal that Hamas has reportedly been mulling over. Now, it is being reported that Hamas officials are heading to Cairo today and could be even giving their answer to whether or not they'll accept this deal. There have been some reports that Hamas officials, certainly in the Politburo, have been saying that they see no major issues with this current deal on the table. So that is, of course, something very positive, but there's always a bit of a split between Hamas's Politburo and the military wing, and of course Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas in Gaza. And so whether or not they'll be able to agree on what's stipulated in this particular deal, of course, remains to be seen. It is never done until it's done, Beresh, and we've certainly we've seen it come close many times before. So we'll certainly have more details for you today.
As this is happening, pressure is growing from within Netanyahu's own government to invade Rafah, come what may. Is that reflective of a split in the government? And if so, what bearing could it have on what happens next?
Well, there's certainly a difference of opinion within the government as to whether or not they should take a deal and take this Rafah offensive off the table. We saw remarks from the Finance Minister, Bezalel Smotrich, one of the most far-right members of Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet. He came out to say that if Rafah was cancelled, then this government would have no legitimacy. He's calling for that operation to take place despite any further talks, whether there's a hostage deal or not. Now, we heard from more centre-right member who wasn't initially part of the government, the coalition, but he came in after October 7 into the war cabinet. That's Benny Gantz. He's a very senior figure in this war cabinet, and he said in a statement that entering Rafah is important, but that the campaign against Hamas, I should say, is very important, but that the return of hostages is even more so. He said if a deal is reached with the backing of the defence establishment, but without ending the war, and then the ministers who led this government on October 7 wouldn't be legitimate if they didn't agree to that. So you do see a difference of opinion there. And certainly what I think we're seeing is that most of the government is committed to going into Rafah, though some members would like to see a hostage deal made in the interim.
We'll leave it there for the time being. DW's Rebecca Ritters in Jerusalem. Thanks so much.